Hey everybody, Victor with Master Book Flippers. All right, so if you're selling used books on Amazon, you probably know about textbook season. It's one of the most exciting times of year, and fortunately for booksellers, it's not just in the fourth quarter like for many new products. We get it twice a year in the summertime and then again in January. So I think some booksellers are not taking full advantage. So in this video, I'm going to give you 3 hacks that are, I think, definitely going to help, and both for merchant fulfilled sellers, at least for 2 of them, and then one of them is more specialized for FBA. All right, let's just jump right into it. All right, the first hack, we're going to call it the let it ride strategy. Now, I'm not referring to the game out in Las Vegas. This has nothing to do with gambling, but it's the name that I've given it, and it's the way I think when I am sourcing a book and the strategy of what I want to do in terms of letting it ride. Now, what exactly does that mean? All right, now we're going to look at some Keepa charts for this, and let me just say this up front. There's a lot, there are definitely other variables to consider, but for this demo and what we're talking about, we're just going to focus on the Keepa chart above. We're not going to look at the lower chart where it talks about the supply. We're not necessarily going to be looking at all the offers. We're just going to, kind of make this simple concept what I want you to understand. All right, let's assume that we purchased this book like in early June, and let's say we got it less than 10 bucks, whatever. And we know that we're coming up on textbook season. So what I like to do, what I've always taught, is we use the historical data as a reference as to what might occur in the upcoming textbook season. So, and by the way, I have this Keepa chart set to a year. If you were just looking at the Keepa chart like this, you may not even realize that it is a textbook. But I will go a year, and oftentimes I'll just do this too. I'll click on the bottom. It says all, and then maybe I'll like zoom in. I'll just grab my mouse and pull in a couple of years, and you can pretty much easily see that this book spikes up quite a bit, right, in the summertime textbook season. Okay, so it's something you want to keep in mind as you're going in. So that's when I'm sourcing this book, I'm going to say to myself, I'm going to set a minimum price. I'm going to set a maximum price. I'm going to set a rule. And I'm also going to set a future reprice date. And what that means is that I'm going to let it ride. I'm going to set these things up initially, and I'm not going to change them. I'm not going to care what happens. And then on a certain day, and I'll show you the day that I might pick on this just as an example, then we will reevaluate and see, what do we do? Do we change the maximum? Do we change the minimum price? Do we change the rule itself? Okay. So in this example, what I might consider doing is we want to see, when is the book selling? When do I anticipate it to sell quite a bit? So this book, and different books have different textbook seasons. Hopefully most people know that. If you're looking at Keepa charts, you will definitely know that. So not all textbook seasons are the same. Some of them last very long time. Some of them are very short. It depends on the book oftentimes. But typically the busiest week tends to be like the 3rd week in August. Okay, but that is not universal at all. So with this book sells pretty strong August and all the way into like middle of September. So you might say, so what I would say when I'm sourcing this book is that I will set up my prices, and I'll tell you what I might do in this example. And then I'm going to let it ride all the way up until maybe the 3rd week of August, or right before the 2nd week of August. Okay. So that's the thought of let it ride. That's what we want to do. But how do we implement that strategy? Okay. So keep organized so that we don't, we don't mess up. We don't overwhelm ourselves with maybe too many books to reprice on any given day, whatever. And the way we do that is using Master Book Repricer. We have in here, for this particular book, I've set up my minimum, my maximum at $32, $36, and then a future reprice date. So, and I have it here set for August 17th. Okay. So this means, like I said, I started doing repricing, and then I set it up and said on August 17th, I'm going to look at it again. And the way we have it set up, the way this works is when we are looking at, when you are using our searches, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this video, but just know that when we set that date up, that means that book, we are not looking at that book again. It's not going to show up. The way we have it set up, it's going to save you a ton of time. you're not going to look at it until 8/17, okay? If at all, because what might happen is that book just sells, and I should be very comfortable and happy if the book sells, and that's what happens oftentimes, right? The book sold, I didn't have to reprice it again, and I move on my merry way and look at the books that do need to be repriced, okay? So, and I think most repricers will work that way, right? If it's not available for sale, you can't reprice it, right? Which is a good thing. Now, but what's even better than this is instead of, sending your book to Amazon, let's say I sent it in, I bought it in June, it got there in July, and I'm looking at it in July, and then I'm making an assessment, and then I'm going to decide the 8/17. What's a better way to do it? What we do is we will not do it in July. We want to look at the book once, right? For a book like this. And when we are using Master Book Flipper software, we're going to establish that price, that future reprice date when we bought the book. Okay. So in this example, we know what the profit is. We know what this is the same book, by the way, right? So we bought it for $8.82. We're not using a prep center or whatever. And we sell it at 36. We should make a $15 profit, decent ROI, all that stuff. And I will set the repricing date here, and I'll make it August 17th, right? And then using our system, again, I'm not going to get into a ton of the details, but if you're using Master Book Flippers and Master Book Repricer, then it'll just carry over. The data will carry over. You'll be good to go, and you don't need to reprice the book. Hopefully you never reprice it at all if you're comfortable selling it in between 32 and 36. Let me be careful on my terminology. I'm saying reprice. We are always repricing, right? Using Master Book Repricer, we're going to be repricing in between $32 and $36. What I mean by reprice is going in, and it has nothing to do with changing the price, okay? When you're using an automatic repricer, the price itself is not even important whatsoever to me. What is important is my maximum price, my minimum price, the rule itself, and the future reprice date, okay? Those are the things that matter when you're using an automatic repricer, and that's what you definitely want to be using when it comes to using repricing textbooks, okay? So that means on the 17th, when I go in to reprice on the 17th or later, it'll show up in my search. I'll say, okay, what do I want to do? And you might have 50 of these books like this, right? And then you could say, okay, I'm going to lower it. I'm going to do whatever. And there's going to be some books you're just going to want to dig into. That's what this is for, this interface where we look into one book at a time, okay? And if you're a smaller seller, if you're not a big seller like I am, you actually have an advantage over me because even with my team, we do not have time to go in and look at the Keepa charts and look at every nuance, right? So if you've got the time to do it, then you would use the Let It Ride system and then also go in and do a review. And we will do this for, books that we got lots of copies. That's going to be important. Or we just spent a lot of money on a book, right? We're going to pay more attention to those. Now, let me give you one example where we don't want to let it ride, and it might be for a textbook. Okay, so for this book, we can see this book is also a textbook. However, the book just dropped, and let's say I purchased it, in June, and we got it pretty cheap, less than $10 or something. And it looks like, at least if we look at last year, what happened during textbook season, not a whole lot, right? It wasn't that exciting. And maybe I'll be very happy to just sell the book right now at $37.78 if I was matching the buy box. So that strategy might be, okay, I don't want to let it ride. I want to get that book in there and I want to have it sold as soon as possible. Okay, so we're going to set a maximum price, maybe at, around 37. The exact number doesn't matter. And then a number, below that. So that's hack number one. All right, hack number two, we're going to call it the merchant to FBA price gap strategy. All right, now what we're looking at here is something we're not going to find on the Keepa chart, but this is happening, and this does happen during textbook season, and I want to make you aware of it and help you better understand how you can take advantage. Okay, so what we're seeing on this chart are the sales by day during the heart of textbook season, for example, books sold by FBA and books sold by FBM. All right, So for example, on August 15th, we'll say that there were 2 books sold FBA, 6 sold merchant fulfilled, and so on and so forth. And you could see as we get into textbook season, as the numbers go up, that just means it's getting busier and busier. And we'll certainly see that on the Keepa chart regarding the green line, the sales rank, right? Those you'll see a lot of sales happen as we get into the heart of textbook season. But we can't see is, who's selling it, right? We don't know. But this is what happens oftentimes with textbooks. And I'm going to show you on the Keepa chart, behind the scenes kind of why this happens and how you can take advantage. But point is if you can see that something happened on August 25th, there were 13 books sold for FBA, and there were 32 sold by FBM. And then the next day, on August 26th, it went to 0 FBM, and it shot up to 48 FBA. And then from there, it went to 46, 42, as you can see. So why did that happen? And how can you take advantage if you're an FBA seller? Okay, the reason this happened is quite simple. The merchant fulfilled sellers sold out. So the sales velocity of the FBA sales will increase when merchant fulfilled sellers sell out of all of their copies. Okay, and this definitely happens. Okay, so I want you to at least know that this happens, and then I want to show you on the Keepa chart and on the offers, what you can do to maximize your results during textbook season, at least knowing about this. Okay, so let's look at this Keepa chart first. So this is an example where, hey, textbook season's coming up, and you can see we anticipate, looking at what happened last year, that sales should shoot up quite a bit on this book. So you can see over here, about the 3rd week of August, the price shot up tremendously, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want to be caught behind when a wave of sales are going to come up for FBA sellers. How will you know that? We're going to look at the offers. Okay, now here's the mistake, and I think I made this early on. If you're going to be repricing and you're actually looking at the offers the way I am now in this example, and you immediately go in and you just filter and you look at the FBA offers, right? You say to yourself, well, this is my only competition I need to worry about. I don't really care what the merchant fulfilled sellers. And I know I pointed this out to some Master Book Flippers customers, and they're like, yeah, I never really considered that I shouldn't be doing that alone, all right, in a vacuum, okay? And I'm going to show you why. So if you were just, pricing this book right now, you're going to say, well, I don't want to be the lowest I certainly don't want to be the lowest going into textbook season. What drives this point home even further is this, okay? You want to look at the books that were the merchant fulfilled offers. So what you're seeing here are all the offers. This is unfiltered, or it's just looking at the used offers. And you can see that the merchant fulfilled offers are priced very close to the FBA offers. They're not far off. So if you are one of these FBA offers, you should be saying to yourself, these guys are going to sell out quickly, and all of a sudden I'm going to be the lowest. Okay, really quick, early in textbook season. And that's not a good strategy to have, especially for a textbook like this that sells pretty strong throughout July, August, all the way into like mid-September. Okay, so point being with books like this or when you're going to do repricing, don't just go in and you're looking at the offers. Don't just look at the offers for FBA. Look at both merchant fulfilled and know that all of a sudden, as soon as these guys sell out, and especially if you're the lowest FBA and it's early in the season, well, then you really need to jack up your price because those books are going to sell really quick, okay? And you do have other competition. So don't just put your head in the sand and don't worry about merchant fulfilled. It has a big impact, okay? Again, look at how much these prices have changed in such a short period of time for this particular book. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in here and I'll see that, this is why we like textbook season, because the prices can go up, but you got to take advantage, right? So the lowest price on August 14th was $10.91. Maybe it was a little lower, whatever. And then what, less than 2 weeks later, the lowest price is $61. And there's no Amazon on here. So, and we don't really have to worry too much about the new price. It's even priced higher. So definitely something you want to pay attention to, especially, again, pay attention to those merchant fulfilled offers. All right, now hack number 3, I'm going to call it strategic overpricing. And you can do this for FBA or FBM, but I will warn you, this does not work if you're doing manually repricing, if you're using a non-automatic repricer. Okay, you're going to want to use an automatic repricer. You're going to want to also raise your prices to the max, especially during textbook season. Okay, so this is one of the reasons that Master Book Repricer will definitely beat out Amazon's repricer. If you're just using Amazon's repricer, you're probably not going to want to do this, or you can't do this. Now, if you're using a third-party automatic repricer, that can work. Just cross your fingers that you don't have a data blind spot issue. All right, so this book happens to spike up during most of the past few years during textbook season. Now, that being said, if you were pricing the book and using this as a reference, you may say to yourself, I think pricing at $100 or, between $100 and $120 is likely a mistake because, it may not reach that high, right? It's probably more conservative to me to price around, $70, $80, maybe somewhere around where these others have been the previous years. But remember what I said earlier, we're not really going to think about a price. Instead, we're going to think about a price range. So therefore, what you could do, what I do for books like this, is I'm going to make my maximum price much higher. But I'm going to make my minimum price, in the range we just talked about. And what happens when you do that is that there are going to be occasions for some of your books, not only are we going to establish our minimum and maximum, but we're also going to re-raise our price, and we're going to do it all at once. We're doing all of our inventory, whatever books we want at any time. So every day you could be doing this, or every couple of days, so that you can maybe catch what happened as you see over here. As you can see, in the previous summer textbook season on August 9th, the lowest price was $63.71. And about, 10 days later, the price jumped up. And you can have a better chance of taking advantage of that if you're actually priced there with a maximum price. Not putting your price, your maximum price, and doing what I just said. So by using this strategy, what we're doing is we're opening ourselves up to the upside with very little to no downside because we're using that automatic repricer. And the moment we go up, if we price that high and it's way too high, the automatic repricer will just lower you right to where you need to be. But you want to catch it in one of those days where all of a sudden the price spiked up quite a bit. And that will happen. I mean, this is why this thing is the way we do it is so awesome. Why I've been doing this for years is we're able to take advantage where others, aren't doing this. And it's very satisfying when you just say to yourself, I beat the market, I beat most other people because I did something that most people don't do. And that is price really higher than even what I thought the book could sell for. And then you end up getting that price, okay? And you're just going to be happy that you've implemented such a strategy.